Natlan has been a fantastic nation so far. It is a clear upgrade over everything we have seen before. The Archon quest was fantastic. I do have minor nitpicks, but they pale in comparison to the good stuff, all of the lore and information revealed in it. And the world quests were pretty much the exact same thing. In fact, I would argue that the world quests were even better in terms of lore. They taught us a lot about how Natlan was created by Xbalanque and how the nation was founded after his alliance with the Sage of the Stolen Flame, along with the history of Teyvat in general and dragons. So now I'm gonna throw all of that in the garbage and tell you about one of the worst experiences that I've had the displeasure of sitting through in all of Genshin Impact. I am talking about the new tribal quest lines, and specifically the one for the people of the Springs, which is essentially the new story quest format that Hoyoverse have made for Natlan, and the one in question is Mualani's. But before I get into it, I want to quickly say that it really surprised me how overbloated this questline was and how bad that made it, because it came in Natlan, and like I said, Natlan has been borderline perfect so far. It's really good gameplay, it's amazing in terms of storytelling, there was nothing bad in it. And even after the quest, after the Mualani People of the Springs tribal quest, every other quest I did was pretty much perfect in terms of pacing and lore. So this questline came at me like a horror jump scare. I was not expecting it at all. Let me explain what I mean. The entire questline consists of 3 acts. Acts 1 and 2 together are around 30 minutes long, give or take combined, while Act 3, which as you can imagine is where the bulk of the storyline happens, is around 1 hour and 55 minutes. So combined, the whole thing is 2 hours and 20 minutes. But these are not your typical 2 hours and 20 minutes of storyline. This is 2 hours and 20 minutes of complete garbage that can be shortened into 55 minutes while retaining the overwhelming vast majority of the essence and purpose of the story. Acts 1 and 2 are essentially useless. Especially Act 2. Act 2 has no purpose in the story. You can remove everything from Act 2 and put it in Act 3 while removing most of Act 3. This is how useless Act 2 is. Act 1 introduces us to 2 Sumeru scholars that want to go to an area called the Mysterious Island. Ooh, very mysterious. And after this essentially serves to kickstart the story. Typical, nothing crazy here. They waste a little bit of time talking about their ambitions and shit that we do not care about, which we'll forget in 5 minutes. After that, we move into Act 2, where we pretend to get scammed by a bunch of thieves from the People of the Springs, after which the chief comes in and lays the kibosh on that shit. And then the chief tells us about the mysterious island and how all the People of the Springs heroes tried to go there, but many of them failed, and no one can go there except the very first tribal chief that they ever had, the one who founded the People of the Springs. So all of that information in Act 2 where we get scammed, I went back and looked at it and watched the whole thing. I have absolutely no clue how the fuck that was necessary for what happens in Act 3. Completely useless! That information that the tribal chief tells us could have been taken from Act 2, remove all of Act 2, and put it in Act 3. It genuinely seems like the only reason Act 2 exists is to pad time because they didn't know what to do there. But for the most part, that entire quest line could have been either shortened significantly or removed entirely, and the useful information in it could have been the introduction of Act 3. And Act 3, which is 1 hour and 50 minutes long, approximately at least, it's unbelievably bloated, overbloated to hell. So you know how Act 1 and 2 together were 30 minutes long? Here's the thing. Act 3 is where we go to Mualani in order to tell her about the mysterious island, and then we reunite with the 2 academia scholars in order to go together as a whole party, Traveler, Mualani, Paimon, and the 2 scholars into the mysterious island. But before we go there, we spend the first 26 minutes preparing for the journey. And by prepping, I don't mean like providing useful information for the story and doing logical shit that makes sense. No, we go with Mualani from store to store, where she calls the store owners funny, cute names. Holy shit, it's so bad! And then we buy a bunch of equipment that we end up using for 2 minutes in the whole quest line, and we spend 26 minutes, buying a bunch of useless equipment that appears for around 2 to 3 minutes. So that's 26 minutes that can be completely removed from the quest line, from the 1 hour and 50 minutes. Remove all of that. And as I said, Act 2, essentially all of it is useless. And then once we actually get to the questline itself, the vast majority of the time we're not even progressing through useful stuff, we're just talking about... Essentially, Mualani is arguing with one of the academia scholars, and they're repeating the exact same thing over and over again. So he tells her something, she tells him something else. We do a trial, and then the trial fails, we repeat the trial again. And then it happens one more time. He tells her something, she tells him something else. And of course she's correct because she's the character being slow, so she has to be correct. These are around essentially 20 more minutes that you can remove from the quest line. And that's such a shame, because if you actually take a step back and look at the whole thing, the storyline itself is not bad. It's a good storyline, and the gameplay of the quest is also not bad. And what makes it even sadder is that this quest happens in a nation where everything before it and everything I did after it was very, very good storytelling. Like the questline with Shabalanke and the Sage of the Stolen Flame it's insanely good. So after doing that questline and after doing the Archon quest, coming to this unbelievably stale story and having to sit through it was super surprising. Like I said, it's a horror movie jump scare. So the characters were decent, the storyline, the overall storyline, not everything in it, was pretty damn good. Like, the moral of the story isn't anything too crazy. It's essentially about understanding the value of keeping a secret in order to entice future generations, and all of the stuff that ties into that. So the storyline itself doesn't reinvent the wheel, but it's pretty decent. And the gameplay of the quest is actually good. I have nothing bad to say about it. So you have a questline where the gameplay is good, the overall storyline is good, and the characters are good, that is completely ruined by the insanely bad pacing. Insanely bad pacing. Oh, by the way, I say the characters are good. They are all good except for one. One of the two academia scholars, his name is Viramdra, and he's essentially what you would get if you take a person, remove all of their capacity for common sense, and then apply every single negative stereotypical trait of a stuck-up smartass that is always wrong. And he is by far the biggest moron I have seen in my life in Genshin. Well, actually, no, I have seen bigger idiots in Genshin. Paimon always exists. But he's one of the biggest idiots in the entire game. My guy argues with Mualani. She tells him something about the land, and then right after we leave, he goes and does that thing that she told him not to do and almost dies. And then he does it again, like in a different location. And this guy is supposed to be an academia scholar, one of the most prestigious academic institutions in all of Tevat. What? He does say a few useful things about the Sage of the Stolen Flame and the history of Mualani's tribe, which is fine, but 5 minutes of useful information about the lore doesn't make up for 2 hours and 15 minutes of garbage. So when we reach the final destination, which is the underground cavern with lava and all of that stuff, and we try to find the mysterious island, Mualani says that her ancestors warned them about not going into the light. So my guy goes instantly into the light, and he's supposed to be experienced in the field of geology. Throws all of his equipment, he had a backpack of equipment, throws all of it, dive bombs into the light, and then when he reaches the mysterious island, which turns out to be a huge crystal, he just sits there and looks at it. And here's the thing that blows my mind. He is someone that's supposed to be experienced in the field of geology. The first thing you do When you reach an unidentified crystal, is not try to take a sample from it. You don't even touch it. The first thing you do is you either scan it, which I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt. They do not have advanced scanners in those days, but you can also take a picture using your camera, which exists into that. What the actual fuck was he doing? He just ran through all of his equipments and stared at the crystal. And the crazy thing is, he cannot even grab a sample because the crystal is surrounded by lava, and when it glows, it's a sign of the lava eruption or the magmatic eruption. But here's the thing, even if he can grab a sample, you don't just go and grab a sample. The first thing you do is you take a picture of the environment in order to visualize or have a record of what the sample looked like before you took it and where it was and what its surrounding environment was like. Holy shit, he's so stupid. This essentially immediately tells me that the guy who wrote it had no clue what geoanalysis looks like. So, but I mean, it's not that difficult to know, because let's say you're writing a story about a doctor, a surgeon, and in your story you have someone who is injured in his liver. You're going to be looking into what are the first 10 steps that a surgeon would do to help someone that is injured in his liver. Now, obviously, liver injuries are extremely dangerous and sometimes you cannot save them, but there is certain etiquette that you follow when you're dealing with things like that require complex scientific or mathematical processes. He's not even a new student. He's supposed to be in an advanced form of study, which I think is the equivalent of masters in the world of Tevat. I'm not sure what it is, but again, he just runs like a moron into the crystal, doesn't take his camera, just runs into it. And the last thing about him is that this moron uses the word theoretically more than the eye blinks per minute. And he doesn't even say it in a good way. He doesn't use the word correctly. I'm pretty sure the person who... I don't know if this is a mistranslation from Chinese to English, but if this is what the dialogue looks like in Chinese, my god, it's horrible. He uses the word theoretically in the most cliche, cartoonish way possible. He talks like this. So theoretically, according to my calculations, this should theoretically be possible. This is a little bit of exaggeration from my part. I kid you not though, it's not too far off from what I said in the quest line. He actually uses the word theoretically around 5 times in the exact same sentence. It's insanely bad, it's so bad. My god, this questline is sad. And it could have been so much better with a few minor adjustments. Anyway, I'm not gonna waste your time anymore on this. It's absolutely horrible quest, insane potential. Natlan is one of the best nations so far in terms of quest lines. It's very surprising to see something this bad. And what's really sad is if you remove Viramdra, or at least make him not less stupid, and you shorten the quest from 2 hours and 20 minutes to around an hour or 55 minutes or something along those lines, like remove all the trash, this becomes a pretty decent quest. Like, the gameplay is good. The overall storyline and message are decent. And all of the characters, except Viramdra, are also good. It's just bad because of the pacing and Viramdra. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I am working on a Shabalanke video, of course, I mean, that's the biggest topic right now. And Star Rail video, another Genshin video, maybe Elden Ring, we'll see. Until the next time, I'll catch you then. Thank you for watching and take care.